This is Dr. Rob Harter with the Nonprofit Leadership Podcast, Making Your World Better. What does it take to be an effective nonprofit leader today? What are the biggest challenges? What are the biggest obstacles? How should nonprofits fundraise in an economy that is constantly changing? All of these reasons combined led me to start this show. And it's my hope that through this series, people can learn not only what it takes to be an effective nonprofit organization, but to hear from effective leaders who are successfully making a positive impact in their communities. We hope you enjoy this show, as together we hear how they are making their world better. Welcome to the Nonprofit Leadership Podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in today. You know, in the social impact sector, we talk a lot about passion, and passion is critical, right? When you have passion, you can motivate volunteers, motivate donors, motivate your own team, motivate yourself to accomplish the mission of the organization that you lead or are a part of. But passion is not enough. In fact, it's been said this, it's not original with me, it's been said that passion is not enough. In other words, it's not so much our passion that will get us the results we need, it's patterns that really bring about the leadership results that we seek. So my question for you as we launch into this discussion today in this episode, what are the patterns, the systems, the processes that you've put in place in your own leadership journey and for your own organization? Because developing the right patterns, the right systems, the routines that really help move your organization forward, at the end of the day, will bring the results that you're actually seeking. It will actually help you accomplish your mission. And this is a topic we talk about with my guest today. My guest is Alexx Goeller. She is the CEO of Wasteless Solutions. It's a great organization based in Salt Lake City, Utah. And they're all about food insecurity and helping to rescue food. Essentially, number one, to make sure people that are hungry get the food. And two, it rescues it from the landfill and keeps it from going into the landfill. There's lots of good benefits of what they're doing. And she's got lots of passion, which is great, but she also has patterns. She's got great routines and systems put in place. Now, she's fairly new to her position, so she's going to talk a bit about some surprises and new challenges that she didn't expect until she got into the role. And she also will just talk about what it's been like to serve in the social impact sector. So always love having you tuning in. Now on to the show. This podcast is sponsored by DonorBox. DonorBox, helping you help others with the best donation forms in the business. Well, welcome to the Nonprofit Leadership Podcast. I have Alexx Goeller here with us. Alexx, thanks so much, first of all, for taking time to be on the show.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
You got it. You got it. Well, as you know, this podcast is all dedicated to leadership and people in leadership positions in social impact organizations. And what you do is exactly that. I mean, you are making an impact throughout your whole region, the state, and I want to get into that a bit. So maybe what we could do is talk about what first led you to serve in the social impact sector and what continues to motivate you today to stay in it and keep serving in it.
Yeah, I love that question. It makes me feel very reflective. And sometimes I have a hard time remembering exactly when it began.
Yeah.
But I know by the age of 12, I was telling everyone that I had set my sights on joining the Peace Corps. And that was my goal from a very young age. I think before I even knew what that meant. And I made most of my decisions in high school and in college based on that, including where I wanted to volunteer, taking on leadership roles from a pretty young age. And then I have just loved being in this world, this sphere, this public social impact space. And I continue to be motivated by it because I truly can't imagine doing work that isn't mission driven. Even on the hard days, it feels very gratifying at the end of the day to know what I'm doing is really impactful and has helped. I've always just wanted to help people. And in all the jobs I've had, that has felt like what I've been doing.
Always love hearing why people do what they do, and passion and a love for something is often for, I think, mission-driven organizations. I think that's a common theme. So I love to hear that is part of your story as well. Okay, so now having said that, I think it's a great segue into passion. We talk a lot about passion in the social impact sector, and it's good. I think passion is a wonderful thing to have. It motivates people. It gets other people motivated, whether it be volunteers, your team, your board. Passion doesn't necessarily drive results. And some people actually have said that it's not so much our passion, but our patterns that really will bring us the leadership results that we seek. So maybe you could talk about that when it comes to your own life as a leader. What are some of the key routines or systems you've developed that you feel like, as you look back, have really contributed to your growth and success as a leader?
Yeah. Well, I'm very hyper organized. So lots of just various project management tools, formats. Something I have found that has helped me a lot in every role I've had is just trying to always be aware of how my individual day-to-day efforts are contributing to the greater good of the organization. Obviously, we can kind of get lost sometimes in what are we doing and why. And if I'm making this spreadsheet, kind of what's the point? So an example of how I do that is I keep a pretty consistent list of what my accomplishments are related to my job description. And then I color code that based on our strategic plans. So I can always feel like I'm tying back into the bigger picture of our organization, and that my day to day, even if it can kind of feel mundane sometimes, is tying back into the greater goals and bigger picture of our organization. And that I found has helped me. And then I can sort it if I need to do a board report or something on various parts of it. And it helps be like, oh, yeah, I did a lot last month, even if it sometimes feels like you're just, lost in the weeds sometimes.
Well, as you list the things you're doing and you're busy with, one of the things I know is so difficult, but so important as a leader is saying no to things. In other words, you can't say yes to everything. In fact, I've heard it said that it's not so much your yeses that count, it's the no's that really make a difference. Because when you say no, you're basically setting a boundary to say, this is what is most important. Here's where I'm going to put all of my emphasis for this time because of our mission. Maybe talk about that a little bit. If you had any difficult yet impactful no's that really made a difference in your leadership experience there.
Yeah, so I've only been at Wasteless, my current organization, for about 2 months. So in this particular role, maybe not a ton yet. However, I know that in the food rescue space, in the food security space, people are very passionate. We have very passionate volunteers, very passionate partners. I think we've had a lot of folks coming to us with really well-intentioned ideas of what they think we should be doing. And, I think we've sometimes had some like potential mission creep and almost trying to do too much. So I think that while we're always open to hearing new ideas and to innovation, I think we have learned that we need to just stay laser focused on our core pillars, which are that food rescue component. We have a neighborhood nourishment program and then education. And if it doesn't fit in one of those three pillars, we have to say no.
I like that clarity. I think
people.
that's excellent. Really good. No, that's great that you have that, in your mind so clear and you're able to do that. Okay, as you think about your leadership journey, you mentioned you already been a little bit reflective of what motivated you first to go into the nonprofit social impact sector. Tell us a bit about your journey. Has there been major victories or a big setback that has really marked or shaped who you are as a leader today?
Yeah. So I kind of thought back to the Peace Corps again, as that's sort of where it all began.
Yeah.
Peace Corps, you're committing to 2 years living abroad to help a community that has requested for a volunteer to be there. And I knew that would be challenging being away from home. I don't think I quite expect the level of obstacle and challenge I encountered while I was there. There were a lot of days that I was thinking, I cannot do this 2 years. I'm not going to make it. But I did. A part of me is just very stubborn. Yes. I think it showed me it can really be worth sticking through the tough things. However, I feel like it also showed me that maybe it's okay to sometimes say when something isn't the right fit, which I have now been able to do in some roles, because I'll think back and I'm grateful I stuck out that Peace Corps experience, but I also have been in positions that just didn't quite fit. And I've been able to say, I'm not going to stick this out, for example. And I think it's helped me have a little bit broader perspective.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. I loved hearing that resiliency that you are early on part of your leadership journey. I think that's great. I think resiliency is so critical for any leader, particularly as you believe in the social impact sector right now. There's so much up in the air. There's a lot of challenges. So love hearing that. Okay, so we already kind of alluded to this, certainly in your role now, but in other positions you've had up to this point. Oftentimes in the social impact sector, we wear a lot of hats. So there's a lot of responsibilities. Oftentimes, social impact organizations don't have a huge budget. And so you can't just hire for every role you really should or could hire for. So it ends up landing on 1 or 2 or 3 people that end up doing a lot of things. When it comes to you wearing your many hats, how do you balance time investing in those areas where you have leadership strengths that you're really good at? And it sounds like organization is one of them. And what about those things that maybe aren't so much your strengths? Are you able to delegate those out? How do you mitigate and keep those from really holding you back as a leader and holding the organization back when, in a sense, you still have to wear that hat, even if it's not your strength?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I would say I'm pretty good at delegating. I
Okay.
love to really sit down, even with a super small team in the very beginning, and
Yeah.
look at their job description, understand what elements of the job they think that they're actually doing daily. If not everything on there, we need to adjust the parts of their jobs they really like, that they feel really strong in, the parts they feel maybe a little weaker, that they need more support. And we kind of create a plan based on that. And then making sure we're regularly checking in on that plan. And then I kind of do the same thing for myself. I look at my big picture goals, the tasks that are in front of me, where I need more support. And I kind of will then either look to a staff member or maybe even a board member. Hey, these are my focus areas. This is where I'm feeling a little bit weak. So I think you have to have vulnerability to admit those times that maybe that's not your biggest strength, and where to delegate. Know your team members' strengths and as well as your board members' strengths, and be really specific. I think people want to help. You just have to tell them, this is the task I need help with right now. And I don't need more than that, or I don't need like that to be expanded on too much, but this is where I need that support. So I think that with those, and just being okay, kind of, if it's not perfect, if you are delegating, sometimes maybe you will have to make a few adjustments or something if it doesn't come back quite how you expected, but it's okay. And it's great to let other people be involved and have a say in it and, have that ownership.
Yeah. Adding on to that, there's kind of a philosophy out there, and I'm curious to see where you kind of land on this. There's a whole frame of reference out there that says when it comes to your strengths, lean into your strengths even more as you grow as a leader and your organization grows. In other words, focus on those strengths, and those things that are considered weaknesses, hand them off, hire them out, delegate them, so in other words, don't try to maybe shore up some of your weaknesses where they're kind of an average strength, but really lean into your strengths more. Do you have that philosophy? Would you agree? Do you think that works? Because here's the challenge, I think, for a lot of people in the social impact sector. You don't have often the luxury of letting these things that maybe you're not good at, say you're an executive director and maybe finances are not your thing. You may not have the luxury though yet to just hire that out because you don't have the budget, or delegate it to somebody who can really carry it through at the level you need. So how do you balance that where you want to lean into your strengths and really emphasize those, but you still have these areas maybe you're not as strong at? How have you made that balance, when it comes to, do you tend to lean more on your strengths? It sounds like you delegate well, but what's the struggle, if you would talk about how do you balance that again overall in your life?
I think, yeah, it kind of is a little bit what I had said in that last answer of just somewhat being okay with imperfection, I guess, for lack of a better word. The finances is definitely something I'm struggling with right now. Just
Okay,
learning
that's a real
everything. And
struggle. Yep.
yeah, we've had some interesting stuff with our accounting software. I've been talking to the board and they're just saying, if we need to find someone to help you with this, maybe we carve it out of the budget. Or I think it is just being kind of not brutally honest in a way, I guess, with yourself, with
Yeah.
your board. This is where I think I need some more support. Is there anyone? And we do have a really great treasurer on our board that is able to help with a lot of that financial stuff. So, harnessing the strengths again of the people around you and having, some humility and knowing that I'm not going to be good at everything. And I'm very self-aware. I very much know that. And being sure you surround yourself with people that are going to be on your team and are still going to advocate for you, regardless of if you do everything perfectly. Like no one expects anyone to do that, hopefully. And just making sure you're clear about the parts too that you don't quite understand, being like specific about the help or where you're feeling like those strengths are not quite where you don't quite have as many strengths in that area.
You got it. And, with leadership, often it's been said that leadership can be lonely. And there's sometimes you have these struggles, whether it be an area of weakness that you need to do regardless because it lands on your plate. And I find that sometimes leaders don't always share all of their struggles because they're worried that maybe their board or a donor or even another staff member would think, well, why are you in this role? If you're struggling, why are you in this role? Maybe that's not the good role for you. And so I think you start having imposter syndrome. You start doubting yourself. I'm curious with your own journey and maybe your experience with leaders that you've worked with, organizations you've worked with. Is there kind of a constant or regular theme when it comes to social impact leaders again, that there's challenges that they face, but they don't often openly talk about? Are there struggles you feel like that you hear kind of, outside of the typical conversation where people are, yeah, this is something I'm really actually struggling with, but they won't tell their staff? Have you bumped into that? And if so, what are some of those themes? Because I think that's why I love this podcast. We want to provide opportunities to talk about all kinds of things because we all do face challenges and sometimes we don't always like to talk about them openly. Is there anything you've run across in your experience over the last several years that fall into that camp?
So fundraising obviously can be incredibly time consuming. And despite all the effort that goes into what we do to get grants and make the requirements appropriate and met for our funders, it can be discouraging then if you don't receive that funding. However, it's incredibly rewarding if you do find a funder who just gets it, who really sees you as a partner. They're not just providing dollars or volunteers, but they're offering, that flexibility and trust, and they want to create shared goals with you. Not every experience obviously is like that, and that's pretty rare to find funders that are like that. And I don't feel like we talk enough about how emotionally and logistically challenging that disconnect can be. I think companies mean well, and I think a lot of companies have really great social impact initiatives and sustainability goals, and some execute those a little more authentically than others. And I think a lot of us are just so eager to get whatever resources we have. So maybe we say yes to things that are maybe more work for us to coordinate than they would be if we just were like, no, we don't have the capacity for that. And so I think that's something I talk about a lot in my spheres, especially when I've done a lot of development focused, fundraising focused work is just, and I think there's a lot of good podcasts that are coming out more and more about that, about, we wish funders just could empathize with that a little bit more. And I think some, like I said, are getting a lot better, but I know that's something that we talk about a lot. We all have to fundraise and it's tricky. I wish there was even an easier way to match, hey, these 10 companies really care about these 10 causes. Here are 10 nonprofits that do that. A speed dating sort of an event.
I like that. Okay.
That
yeah.
is challenging.
Do you think since COVID, has there been changes? Do you feel like more corporations are understanding that they should give gifts as long as they trust the organization, right? And you're transparent on the other end as an organization. But do you feel like they're giving more unrestricted gifts than they used to? What's been your experience in that?
Yeah. And I will say here at Wasteless, we're really working on building up our corporate partnership program. We get a lot of great support from foundations, and those have been incredibly generous and flexible and are offering more capacity building support or operational support, which is huge. I think that has been a shift. In the past, it was so specific, has to go to this particular thing, this particular program. And I think a lot more funders are understanding you need to fund overhead. This is what nonprofits need. They need to be able to pay a team and have more employees and have them pay a livable wage. And I think that funders are getting a lot more on board with that, which is really great and is so helpful. And I think that the unrestriction of funds is huge. And I think we still do a really great job of showing the impact that we make. And so we see some good success with that.
I'm so glad to hear that. That's great. And I've seen the same thing. I feel like for whatever reason, I feel like COVID was a real interesting time where people just understood nonprofit organizations needed money quickly, and unrestricted gifts was the best way because then they could use it for the most maximum impact for what they were facing on the ground. So I'm glad to hear that's continued for you. And along those lines, I'm thinking for leadership challenges you faced. You're fairly new into your new position. Talk about, was there anything that you were not expecting? Then once you got into the role, all of a sudden there's these challenges that faced you that you were not quite ready for or just didn't expect.
Yeah. So I came in very much like, we need to have signed partnership agreements with everyone who donates food and everyone who receives food. And let's formalize all this stuff. And it should be really easy to just get that done. And it's been challenging so far to just get a lot of these systems in place that I believe we still will get in place eventually. But there's been some, I'm not going to say pushback, but just some more back and forth with some of these partnership agreements with some of our food donors. And I think it's just like a little bit of a mindset shift of we're so grateful for the willingness to donate food for these partnerships. But I've already been reflecting in my short time how we can deepen the partnership. And one part of that is, this agreement that, showcases they're generously providing food. We're also providing this service by ensuring it gets to those who need it safely and efficiently. And I'm trying to explore more ways to make this mutually beneficial, even beyond how mutually beneficial it already is. so that everyone can feel valued and acknowledged, even if it's just, wasteless food donor window sticker, you know, just getting our name out there more, us getting their name out there more. So I don't know if I expected everyone to immediately just be like, yep, I signed this agreement and now I'm going to do all this like social media, whatever, to thank you. And so it's just going to take time. And I mean, I've literally only been here since the beginning of June, so I'm a little bit impatient, but I'm excited to dive into that more. And I think it's going to be really great once we can just, get through some of the initial small bumps in the road.
We'll be right back. Are you looking for an easy and effective way to boost your nonprofit's donations? Well, look no further than DonorBox, the online fundraising platform that streamlines your fundraising efforts, maximizes donations, and simplifies giving for your supporters. With DonorBox, you can create beautiful donation forms, accept digital wallet payments, track donations, and send auto receipts. And the best part? There are no setup or monthly fees and no long-term contracts required. So what are you waiting for? Visit donorbox.org today to get started. That is www.donorbox.org.
Maybe again, for my listeners, talk just a bit about Wasteless Solutions. What is your mission? Obviously, you're the executive director there, but yeah, what do you do? What are you all about?
Yeah. So we work to divert edible food from going to the landfill. So we get food from grocery stores, restaurants, caterers, any place you can imagine where there's going to be excess food that might, won't sell for one reason or another, or is just left over. We have a vast volunteer network. We're so dependent on volunteers, and we have the best volunteers. They come pick up that food. They take it then to various other nonprofit organizations like the Road Home or the Rescue Mission, Catholic Community Services, Odyssey House, Boys and Girls Club. We have tons, literally hundreds of receiving sites. And
Nice.
There's actually a wait list right now for receiving sites to get food. And I expect that to just keep growing exponentially with cuts to, federal food relief programs. So it's going to become even more important. And we have rescued over 2 million pounds of food since our founding in 2018. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And just beyond the simple, end quotes, efforts of just getting food that would otherwise be thrown away to people who are hungry, we really are also making a dent in climate change. I mean, I did not know this personally until I started in this role, but just saving food and not wasting it and getting it to the landfill is the most impactful thing an individual can do to reduce their environmental impact. It lowers emissions, conserves resources, and it reduces methane from landfills. So we're really working on providing more of that education and awareness, right? So beyond just the food rescue of physically doing that, providing more education and awareness on how important it is for even individuals to do this and what a huge difference it makes. And it just feels achievable, whereas a lot related to climate change just feels so big and that you can't really make a difference, and you can.
Thank you for sharing that. And I know a lot of food pantries will do that too. They'll rescue food, so to speak. I think as they call it, grocery rescue from grocery stores and whatnot for food pantries. How do you work with local food pantries and or statewide food pantries to basically kind of give a shot for the food to be eaten first, and then eventually for you to take it from there? What's the process of your partnership and collaboration?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we work really well with them. So the Utah Food Bank will reach out to us sometimes if they have a really big food rescue or food donation that they need more hands on. We'll come send volunteers. That's happened a few times. They are unable to pick up from grocery stores on holidays and sometimes on weekends. So we help fulfill that gap. And then honestly, a lot of the grocery stores, are already pretty consistently donating to the food pantries. So we will then focus a bit more on restaurants and caterers and large events.
Okay.
We kind of then try, or the arenas, we kind of then try to look at those other gaps where there is still food that could be potentially wasted. And then we are working on the logistics of getting that food to who it needs to go to. And sometimes we'll even say, oh, hey, food bank, we know you couldn't pick up on the 4th of July. We got some stuff. Can we bring it to you? And similarly with food pantries, we work really closely with the food pantry up in Park City with our new program that has expanded into Summit County. And they'll say, hey, we're going to do this rescue. Can you do this one? We very much see food pantries as a critical partner. There is so much food out there to be rescued and to be redistributed. And so we're very grateful to have, obviously, to just be helping supplement what they're already doing, all that great work.
Well, stepping back again, thinking about the social impact sector, the nonprofit world, Talk about for those who are interested in going into it, either as a career after college, or maybe they've been in the for-profit sector, sold their business, and now they're wanting to do something that's more mission-driven. Talk about, what would you say? You've been in it. Yeah, you're in it now. What are some of the maybe the advice that you would pass on to people that are wanting to go into the social impact sector? What's been the best parts of it, and what are your recommendations for those who want to maybe dip their toe into it to try it out?
I feel like I have a few different answers for that. So I'll try to
Okay, sure. Yeah.
one thing I think is it's smart to get passionate about various causes. I think sometimes it can be a little bit, you kind of pigeonhole yourself if you're like, I only care about this specific thing and I don't want to do anything with anything else. I think that passion can be really great, but that also could be limiting if you're trying to find a job or an internship or volunteer opportunities. So, maybe like casting your net a little bit wider, especially in the beginning. I honestly was not that passionate about, food rescue until I got this role, and I cared about, the environmental impacts. I obviously also cared about people not being, people that are food insecure and wanting to help with that. But yeah, I didn't realize it was something I would get so passionate about so quickly. And I think that can happen with a lot of people that just have, and thinking about what you're passionate about in your day-to-day life. And maybe could that translate to a nonprofit or to the, social impact sector? I would say the other thing that's been huge for me is just finding a good mentor, seeking out opportunities to find a mentor. This can often be done through your alma mater. I'm very involved in like the Westminster University space still, and I often get people requesting me as a mentor, and I love the opportunities to do that. And I feel like people are very often willing to do that, especially if you find an organization you really respect, an employee that works there reaching out and saying, hey, I'd love to hear how you got where you got. And maybe it's not a mentorship or just an informational interview or something. People are usually, especially in this sector, very willing and interested in helping others and, doing whatever we can to get more people interested in the space.
I like your advice. No, excellent advice. I wanted to ask too about funding. We're obviously living right now in an American context specifically, where a lot of federal funds, even state funds, have either changed or been cut drastically. I know a lot of my colleagues in the social impacts sector are really struggling because their budgets now have been slashed by 20, 30, sometimes 40%. How are you doing with that? What are you seeing in terms of the challenges with colleagues you're working with? Are there pretty major funding cuts that people are dealing with right now? And what are people doing to work around those?
I guess luckily or unluckily, we do not have any federal funding. We did apply for a grant and did not get it. And I believe it was last year. We also don't have a ton of government funding in general. We've been really lucky at Waste Less to have a lot of amazing private foundations and individual funders. I will say, though, obviously, a lot of the partner organizations that we work with, the recipients of the clientele they work with are getting their benefits drastically cut. Need for food, like I said before, is rapidly increasing. So us needing to kind of ramp up our volunteers, ramp up more food donors to get more food to these receiving sites is something that we're really focused on. And also, if there ever are opportunities to apply for funding collaboratively, that's something we're really interested in and happy to do. I've always thought that in this space, that there's a little bit too much competition, when a lot of the time, if we were all working, more collaboratively, which I think some orgs are doing, of course, but I always would welcome more opportunities to do that. And that's something we're certainly interested in doing. And again, the ways we can mutually help each other. Part of the agreement I want our receiving sites to help sign is just that we will, call each other out on social media, shout outs, inclusion in the newsletter, inclusion on the website. The more we can talk about each other, the better, of how to just support and get the word out there. But I will say, I think that private funders they know this. And I think that they are stepping up and increasing their donating. They're knowing they can't pull back. And we're very grateful for that.
Right. Absolutely. No, I love hearing that. And I'm glad for you too, personally. That's wise that so far it's worked out and you've had great private funding. That's a benefit at this point. So for my listeners who hear about this, want to find out a little bit more about Wasteless Solutions or connect with you, what's the best place for them to connect with you and learn about Wasteless Solutions?
Yeah. So following us on social media, of course, we're very active on Instagram. And I know I'll be able to provide our handle and stuff to you when this goes out. Our website is really informative, especially you can go in there and learn more about food waste as an individual or what your company or your organization can do to contribute. Eventually, we'll be launching some modules on our website that individuals can basically go through and almost take a course to just learn more about how to waste less food in their day-to-day life. Same, we're going to do something similar for companies. And so yeah, website, social media. And if you are local to Utah, we have our annual fundraiser coming up next month. It's called the Second Chance Dance on August 25th. We encourage everyone to wear their finest vintage or thrifted clothes. We have chefs that come in and are recreating some masterpieces of food, all from rescued food. And, obviously all the proceeds go back to support us. There's a DJ, fun, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So yeah.
Nice. Awesome. Sounds good. Well, Alexx, thanks for all you're doing. I think food insecurity is such a big issue, and you're right. It's only getting more acute with all that's going on in the changing economic landscape. So thank you for what you're doing. And thanks for taking time to share a bit about your journey and opening about your own leadership journey. I think it's been really helpful. So thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you so much. It was great.
Hey friends, well, I wanted you to know that this podcast can be found on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon, Google Podcasts, and wherever you listen to other podcasts. I also want to encourage you to like, subscribe, and share this podcast with others. This will actually help us get this great content out to more nonprofit leaders just like you. You can also join the Nonprofit Leadership Podcast community, find other resources and interviews of past guests, all on my website, nonprofitleadershippodcast.org. Well, thanks again for listening, and until next time, keep making your world better. This podcast is sponsored by DonorBox. DonorBox, helping you help others with the best donation forms in the business.